Well, ladies and gentlemen, another fairy story which I base on the land of the Celts. It was long ago in the time of a man named Gulliver, and yes, he was an extraordinary giant of a man who laboured hard. A seaman he was, who traded as a merchant. It was a time of flat earth days, and the merchant trips only sailed to the lands they had charted. It was in the north that Gulliver quarried and lifted into his bay pillars of granite over 600 million years old. Some say as old as the Cambrian mountains themselves. At home he was a tame enough man, always did his day's work and always took a draught of wine to mellow in the evening. Well enough, one day he was off in an empty vessel to gather more quarry, when a storm took hold of the northern seas, and Gulliver and his crews were forced to trim sails and stay out at sea until they could make port again. Now this is indeed the story of Gulliver's tale, but there are more facts being passed down the generations of my kin than are pertinent to our fair country. Well, as we know, these days the earth is alive in the mineral sense. I mean that by how the stone is known to form, but this is a tale of wonder and sin, and one you're not likely to forget. The weather was so bad Gulliver lost his charts at sea, and as the fairy story goes, he was shipwrecked. Now the information we have is that Gulliver was shipwrecked off Italy and was brought to Rome by the little people. He became discontent. There was never enough food. The hospitality of the little people grew thin when he became impatient about the seamstress who was stitching his rags back together. Before too long the Romans rebelled and tied him down with the thickest ropes they had. Ropes made from papyrus were used after a fierce battle took place. Unfortunately, Gulliver lost the struggle, but when they tied him down, it did not end his rage. The little Romans poked him with their swords. They staked him out in the sun, and all this made Gulliver very angry. He vowed to destroy all of Rome when he got free. Now around this time there was a beautiful woman, some say the most beautiful in the world. Her hair with golden locks, auburn, and with a shade of red. Her eyes were the bluest of blue, and her beauty could turn any man's head. Now for sure this woman's name was Medusa, the notorious arch villain talked about at Bible school. But that had been a story of time before. Should you not know the story of Medusa, hear it now. She seduced many men, married or not, it made no difference. The woman plotted against her and scarred her face by hiring a band of thugs. She was near death in a dark alley when a woman took her in and took sympathy, saying that she could make things all right again. And this after Medusa had rested and looked at her cropped mane and bloodied face, a face cut deep by daggers and glass. The woman told her that she had a soothing cream for her wounds, an old family recipe for those who wanted to retain the suppleness and beauty to their complexion. Medusa was sucked in, and it was of course the evil woman's plans, for she was in Satan's employ. The evil woman tended to the wounds of Medusa and said, "Rest, tomorrow your beauty will be restored in all its glory." Medusa was vain, and vanity was to be one of her cardinal sins. When she woke in the morning, vast changes were apparent, and when she looked into the looking glass, her beauty had been restored. The first thing she saw was that the scarred face was no more, and as she looked, she noticed her eyes had turned green. On closer inspection, she noticed her hair was long, rolling locks again, but this time they were snakes. She was abhorred. Hatred filled her, and her eyes closed tight with rage. Medusa sought out the woman who had taken her in and shown sympathy, but she was nowhere to be found in the dwelling. With no food, she had been forced to wander the streets and beg for food. Her looks were alluring, though she walked as the blind. Many a man came up to her. Her eyes closed, and they begged her to look upon them again. Medusa's heart now stoned with the hatred she felt. Her self-loathing and heathen feeling would falter for just long enough to gaze upon the living. Looking into the gaze of Medusa, thought, though, meant being turned to stone of the hardest qualities as marble or granite. So the old story of Medusa, though it doesn't finish there, as you know, Medusa was banished. But when Gulliver came, and in his rage all Romans feared their baths be destroyed, and their fine glassware shattered. The Senate summoned Medusa to come to the city limits, promising to free her from her plight. and accept her and love her again should she open her eyes upon the giant now known as the Colossus of Rhodes and turn them into stone. Medusa, repentant, wanted to live among her people and came forth and gazed into the eyes of Gulliver. However, even though Gulliver had turned to stone, his rage continued, as he had good heart and only wanted to return home. Gulliver, the Colossus of Rhodes, broke into fragments, a hand here, a foot there, his head toppled into the ocean, and other fragments of Gulliver became the Galapagos of islands that made up Greece. They say Mount Etna is but a pimple on Gulliver's cheek. The council turned on Medusa even though she was repentant, and she was set upon, stoned. With one tyrant gone, the constituents of Rome were going to vanquish this demon they had all come to know as Medusa, and they did. They began to stone her. A solitary man stood tall. He preached about, casting the first stone, and so managed to quell the ride. He walked with her to the coast. When they reached the coast, they carried on walking on water, and might I remind you of when the oceans were fresh. While Jesus and Medusa walked the Pacific Ocean, Medusa's tears salted the ocean. She cried all the while until she reached land. It was an island, there was no wind in the world, and now her home was as barren as but a piece of stone. I know you can make this a beautiful home, said Jesus. Medusa looked around. I am but all alone. If it is my Father's will. Your Father? I am sure when you find your feet there will be others, for now this place is yours. You'll come to no harm here. I feel safe, Lord. If no one comes, will you feed me? This land is your oyster, praying you'll not be lonely. Many years passed. Medusa walked the width and breadth of the land. A strange people came to the land. They spoke a different language, but she could understand them. These people made their land their home, embracing Medusa as their own. The higher chief took Medusa himself as his wife, and to their form and culture their society was polymorous. Families were large, with wives having many husbands, and husbands having many wives. They lived in harmony from the bounty of the sea. About 800 years ago another culture came to these shores, and they were warlike. They carved up the land and hunted the people. Medusa's tribe knew the powers, but to the power of prayer she had managed to harness her anger and put it to good use. This barren land, now shared by cannibals and seafood gatherers, was becoming bloodied. Tani Mahuta, Medusa's husband, and High Chief asked Medusa to save his people. He spoke of lineage, land, and the higher authority, so Medusa agreed to walk the lands, once more leaving her tribe. Medusa gazed upon the tribes of the Moriori, turned them into the Podocarps, Rata, and Kaori that made up the forests of the land. When she returned to her pa, Medusa was all but alone. Happy at saving her people, she sunbathed and spoke to the trees. The five fingers of the five finger, her children, and Tana Mahuta, now Kaori, her husband and high chief. Many years later, Medusa, the happiest she had ever been, lay down thanking God for her salvation, and prayed that she would like to wander over the forests of the world and give thanks. God heard her prayer and raised up her soul to heaven, and the winds were born. A gentle warm breeze on her cheek is Medusa giving her a kiss, though she can still be quick to anger. But the story doesn't end there alone. The Maori coexisted with the bush and the sea, but when Medusa prayed to be the wind, her people were so astonished, and with so much grief, trees fell and turned to stone. And so in the petrified forest you find scratched into stone, Medusa lives here, and her husband and wives sleep with her still. And that's the story. Just a fairy story, and one totally created. And I hope you enjoyed it.